So since 2020, I've been using the Samsung Note 10 Plus as my daily driver, especially for creative works. I do a lot of videography, and filmmaking, and this was basically where I started on. I started on my Samsung Note 10 Plus. So basically, if you're just looking for something as a daily driver, something to just, drive your daily needs, calls, social media, online content, that kind of thing, this phone actually more than suffices for what you need. You don't need more than this phone. This phone actually overcompensates for your daily needs as a smartphone user. But then if you're a creative like me, you edit stuff, you do 4K videos, maybe even do high-end stuff for clients, which I actually did on this phone for the time I used it from 2020 up till now, then you might want to think twice and probably consider what I'm about to say in this video. So first off, I'm talking about how this phone looks like. Now if you look at this phone and you compare it with what you have today, the S24 Ultras, even the S23, S22, it looks quite like those phones. I mean, I've had this phone, used it outside, and people will probably think that I'm using an S24 Ultra because it has almost the exact same look as the S24 Ultra. Probably the only difference you see when you look at the front of the phone is probably just the curved screen, which the S24 Ultra does not have. And for me, that's not a problem. I actually love curved screen. I just like the way it looks like and everything, curving to the sides and all of that. And the phone is actually pretty light, it's thin and all of that. It's not so big, it's just very handy and very light, and compared to the S24 Ultra, which is much more bulkier, the thickness and all of that is much more than what you have here. So for the handling and the design of this phone, I'll give this phone a 10 over 10. It still looks fantastic, still looks good. The camera bump is not in your way and all of that. It just looks good. Talking about the functionality, this phone is packed with a lot of functionality. I look at some reviews today and they talk about the S24 Ultra and how it has this, it has that, has this feature and that feature and all of that. But looking at this phone and what this phone has as regards functionality, most of the functionality features are actually the same as what you find in S24 Ultra. It has One UI, even though the One UI probably is I think One UI 4 point something on this phone, because it doesn't support updates anymore. It's an old phone, it's a 2019 phone, so it doesn't support updates anymore. But if you look at just the basic things like moving around, using the phone for different things and stuff like that, this phone is more than enough. It has an S Pen, which all the S22, S23, S24 Ultra also have, and the S Pen more than does all what you need an S Pen to do. Basically it writes well, and the basic difference, or the biggest difference between the S Pen that comes with the Note 10 Plus and probably maybe what comes with S24 Ultra is probably just the latency. This is probably not as fast as what we have what we have on the S24 Ultra, but aside from that, they basically have the same thing. They have this button here that by the time you remove your S Pen, you can remotely control maybe your shutter button and all of that. It has Bluetooth connectivity with the phone and all of that. If you want a full detailed review of this phone, I actually did a review of this phone some time ago. You can look at that and get more details on how all of these features work. But talking about functionality, everyday features, it does well. The speakers are good, the charging is fine, the user interface, the user experience and all of that, it's fantastic. One thing that I would say is probably not so good on this phone right now, of course, is the battery life. The battery has degraded over time. Now I'm getting about 3 hours of use, max 4 hours of use in a day, so I might have to charge this phone up to 2 times in a day, up to 3 times in a day. But if you get a good refurbished one, with a new battery and new stuff on it, you will probably enjoy it, because when the battery of this phone was good, it could last me the whole day, and I didn't start to feel the degradation in the battery up until maybe like 2 years after I bought it, or maybe 3 years after. That was when I began to notice the fact that this battery is beginning to get weak. And mind you, I got this phone used. So when it comes to how well this performs with high-end stuff, gaming, things like video editing, things like things that use high graphics, a lot of the video you actually see on this channel is actually edited on this mobile phone. I've been using Power Director, I've been using it to edit most of my works on social media and all of that, and I edit a lot of high-end videos on this phone. I shoot stuff on my DSLR, and I come here and I edit. I've also shot stuff using the cameras, and I'll get to that soon. But when it comes to the kind of work that I do, as a filmmaker, videographer, and all of that, it does well with editing. I do a lot of edits on this, including professional works. I've shot a wedding on this. I've shot client work on this. I've shot real estate video on this. I've shot high-end stuff on this. I've shot 4K videos and edited on this phone, and it edits everything buttery smooth. For the processor, it uses a Snapdragon 855, but actually I have the Exynos version, which is the I think 8625 or something like that. When you get to start editing things like 4K videos, more than 4K videos and all of that, on your timeline, while editing, you might have issues. You might start to lag, But if you're just editing things like 1080p videos, 720p videos, it does all that buttery smooth. But on 4K videos, on the timeline, sometimes it stutters, sometimes it lags and all of that. But you still get to use it, you still get to enjoy it. At the end of the day, you get actually very good results when you export. So by and large, it still does well. For me, I can still use this for most of my video editing, especially when I'm editing content for social media and for online content. This works perfectly well, no problems at all. And so when it comes to the cameras, which I'm sure you probably have been waiting for, the cameras of this phone are still quite fantastic in my honest opinion. So now I use a Note 20 Ultra, which is actually shooting the up-down view of this video, and the Note 20 Ultra has fantastic cameras. Compared to this, it's not so much of a big difference, but it has bigger sensors than this. And I expect that okay, I'm using the Note 20 Ultra compared to this, even though it's just a year difference basically. Like the Note 20 Ultra still is an old phone anyway, but comparing the cameras of this to the Note 20 Ultra, the cameras of this phone are fantastic. They do so well. One special thing of note to mention about the cameras that we have on this phone is that the main sensor has a dual aperture, so it actually really does a good job with focusing. The focusing is usually spot on, even compared to the Note 20 Ultra. Sometimes when I try to use the Note 20 Ultra, focusing and all of that, taking pictures, taking videos, sometimes it just loses focus and it's difficult to get it back into focus. But this, it nails the focus and nails it once. For the amount of detail that I get on the lenses on the camera on this phone, you get very clear, crisp images, especially when you're in good lighting. It does fantastically well. We have a main sensor, we have the ultra wide, and we have the 2x zoom lens on this camera, and they do so well. Of course, the trick to harnessing the power of a smartphone is to be very good with your post-production. So sometimes when you take images and probably you don't like the result of what you want, and you want it to be something fantastic, something usable for social media, you have to do some work in post-production. But getting the shot right in the first place is also very important, and this does a reasonable amount of job in getting that very good shot. There are some images I've taken on this phone, and I really did not need to do any much editing, post-production, especially when it comes to things like nature and landscape photography and stuff like that. I've done a lot of landscape photography when I used to travel back then, 2 years ago. When we go for field work and all of that, I use this basically as my camera. I don't take my camera along. I had a camera back then, but I just used this and it did pretty well. If you're a content creator and you're looking for a phone that can do videos very well, maybe you're starting a YouTube channel, maybe you're starting a podcast, maybe you want to be an event content creator, stuff like that, maybe a handler or something like that, this does a fantastic job, very fantastic job. The cameras are very fantastic, and the cameras are not too conspicuous. Just have just these three lenses: the main lens, the zoom lens, and the telephoto lens, and they're just there, nothing. It uses this time of flight depth camera, which is what is here, and it does a good job. So that's this time of flight actually does a better job than the laser autofocus that we have on the Note 20 Ultra when it comes to focusing. And lest I forget, talking about the screen of this phone, the screen of this phone is fantastic. This phone has a QHD plus screen, which is actually the same resolution that we have even in S24 Ultra. That's 5 years later. So Samsung pretty much outdid themselves when they were making this phone. This phone was almost like the perfect phone back then. It was ahead of its time. It had so many fantastic features that, I mean, you just think about it, that why? How are they able to pull this off? Although the screen is 60 Hz refresh rate, it's not like the 120 refresh rate that we have now on most phones. In fact, even budget phones nowadays, you have 120 Hz refresh rate on them. So it's still 60 Hz. If for most people, you really don't you probably not notice the 60 Hz thing. Basically, what I do is that I just go to, just to make my phone feel a bit faster since it's 60 Hz. I just basically go to developer options. I enable developer options on my phone, and then I go to Windows animation scale, and I change it to 1x to 0.5x, to make transitioning faster and all of that. So I change Windows animation scale, transition animation scale, and animator duration scale. I change everything to 0.5x. It makes moving around look a bit more snappier, when you do that, and that gives some kind of consolation. Since you're on a 60 Hz screen, it makes it look kind of faster. If you want to know how to do that and make your phone feel faster when scrolling through pages and all of that, there's a video link in this description where you can see how to do that. So back to the cameras. So I've talked about the back cameras, which are fantastic. They do a good job. And for the front camera is a 10 megapixel camera. It's nothing too fantastic, but it actually really does a good job too also. In fact, most of my content that I've shot on Instagram, talking headshots and stuff like that, I did everything on this phone. Of course, there always cons to every phone. Even the newer phones that we have now, they all have cons. Let's talk of an old phone. And the biggest of that, I would say, is the battery life. This phone has a 4300 milliamperes battery, and like I said earlier, it has degraded over time. Batteries degrade over time anyway. But even when the battery was fantastic, I was getting whole day use. But with a lot of work, maybe I shot videos, maybe I did some editing and all of that, it drastically reduces the battery life very fast. And probably it's because of the processor speed, working over time to get this phone to work and all of that. But I feel the battery life could be better. So even if you get this phone refurbished, you might not really enjoy the battery life. Also, is the fact that it doesn't get any over-the-air updates. It doesn't get updates anymore. Basically, it's an old phone, so support for this phone, even security update, it doesn't get anymore. Support of this phone has been long ditched. So basically, you're stuck on the latest One UI that you had that came with Android 12. But that isn't really a problem, because right from the Android 10 downwards, I haven't really seen any difference in Androids and what they can do basically. So each Android phone actually has customizations that can help you, modify your Android experience. So to me, that doesn't really matter. What matters is how well the phone performs, and this phone does well. This phone comes with 12 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of internal storage for the base version. That means if you're buying the cheapest Note 10 Plus that you have out there, you'll be getting 256 gigabytes of internal storage with 12 gigabytes of RAM. And not only that, it also has a space for an SD card. That is mind-blowing. I mean, you already have 256 gigabytes of storage. Some systems even come with 256 gigabytes of storage. Now having that on your phone and still having expandable storage up to 1 terabyte. That is mind-blowing. Even my Note 20 Ultra doesn't have that. My Note 20 Ultra base version comes 128 gigabytes, of space, although it also has an SD card slot, which was one of the reasons why when I was upgrading from this phone to the Note 20 Ultra, I didn't think of upgrading beyond that, because I needed that expandable storage. It's very important to me. I need a lot of space on my phone. If you're not very careful with your screen, if you don't have a screen protector and all of that, if this screen breaks, I mean, you're as good as getting a new one. And some technicians, especially if they are not Samsung technicians, might not fix this phone well. I actually use my phones without screen protectors, and I'm totally fine with it. I'm very careful with my phones. I don't give just anybody my phone, and it's because I love the experience of using the screen. Samsung screens are too beautiful to put screen protectors on, for goodness sake, but I get it. You don't want to have to think of having to change screens and all of that, so please put a screen protector on it. So if you were to ask me in 2024, even going to 2025, is the Note 10 Plus still a good investment, especially as a creator, a content creator, you know, someone who deals with media a lot? I would say a big yes. This phone still does very well. For the pricing, it depends on when you're watching this video or where you're watching this video from. If you're watching this video from Nigeria, currently you can get this phone refurbished for just over 300,000 naira, or maybe about 350,000 naira thereabouts. Sometimes even less. It depends on whether you're buying a used Note 10 Plus or a refurbished Note 10 Plus. If you're buying a refurbished Note 10 Plus, sometimes it might be more expensive because for some of them, they've changed the screens, they've changed the batteries and all of that. So you're getting something close to a new phone. But right now, of course, you can never get this phone brand new anymore because it's been long out of production. You can only get this phone refurbished. You can also get it on Amazon. So I think I'm done talking now. I'm not sure if there's any other thing I've not covered. If you have any questions, you can ask in the comment section, and see you in the next video.